It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. From Fantatrax TV, this is Good Morning Tatooine!
Good morning, Tatooine indeed. It's the week that TikTok shut down for America and then reopened for America, all within the space of 12 hours. We're going to run slightly less than 12 hours as we cover this week's Star Wars news. My host, Paul Naylor, is enjoying some winter sun, so joining this week from fantatrax.com, Mr. Mark Newbold.
Hello, Brian.
Hello, Mark. How are you? How's your week been?
Not as sunny as it is for Paul, that's for sure. Yeah. It's been okay. I'm getting over one of these silly cough things, so if I mute myself often, that's why I'm hacking up something that
don't believe him.
He's
just swearing. He's just got a terrible potty mouth, you know.
I know.
Should we check out what we've got coming up on the show tonight?
Let's do it.
Right, coming up first, we have Hasbro's Power of the Force line, which is bringing in an SM-33 droid to the line. Next, we'll have an excerpt from Reign of the Emperor, The Mask of Fear, the upcoming novel from Alexander Freed. We'll hear from Jon Watts as he talks Skeleton Crew and how it's been slowly building viewers over each episode. Then we'll head into Jabba's Court, where we'll discuss if Skeleton Crew does not get a second season, where does Star Wars TV go? We'll be celebrating Women's History Month with Marvel as we check out the Star Wars covers being released for that. And a surprise bit of news this week in that Atha Prime, somewhat of a legendary Star Wars action figure, is going to be returning in Jedi Knights issue #1. The American Society of Cinematographers is to honour Kathleen Kennedy. We'll be talking about that. The news, also sad news as well, that London Comic Con Spring has been cancelled. And lastly, we'll be talking Skeleton Crew as the showrunners discuss whether the great works mentioned in the show is related to the High Republic and whether Attin is connected to all of that. So lots to cover there, Mark. Any of that news take your interest straight away?
All of it, Brian. It's Star Wars. All of it. Every single sentence. Yes.
Jonathan there in the comments, hello to you as well. If you've got any thoughts on the news as we discuss it, let us know. We'll include as many of your comments in the show as well and try and answer any questions as well. Mark, you're normally my normal fact checker. So you're gonna have to do it live here. There's no Google this week.
No Google. I'm
no
screwed.
Google. Should we head out straight to the first news article then?
Sounds good to me.
So first up, we're looking at Hasbro's Power of the Force line, which through our friends over at In Demand Toys revealed that there's an SM-33 figure being added to the range, Mark.
I love this figure. I mean, I'm not mad keen on this 4-inch line. I can't see why you'd want to release a 4-inch line when you've got a 3 3/4 line that's got thousands of figures in it. But that said, price point's probably better for the young kids. It is obviously cheaper to make because it's less points of articulation. But it does look really cool. I mean, SM-33 is a cool droid anyway. The packaging looks vibrant. So actually, it's kind of turned me around a little bit on this range. Something that didn't really light me up. Now I'm thinking if that sort of came into my line of sight whilst I was walking through the Toys R Us section of WH Smith, I might just bobble towards it.
The question is, does it have a detachable head?
Oh, there's there's a question. And does a little thing come
Has it got
poking
a
out its
rat that
eye?
lives inside it? Yeah.
That's it, a ratapilla. Yeah.
Yeah. The I was obviously I hate droids. All droids just
Of
terrible.
course, of course.
Kind of proven by this week in Skeleton Crew, but they've been overlorded by a droid. How would you let yourself get in that situation? Anyway, people that elect strange people to power should be discussing that this week. And but SM33 died in episode 7 as far as I thought, and it was brought back in the finale. I was crushingly disappointed at that, but I
I
do
felt for you.
agree, as droids go, he had a bit of character about him, and he had a bit of life about him, so he wasn't the worst.
He had a
So,
purpose. That's the thing. As if a droid's got a purpose, it's good. I mean, for you,
yeah.
the purpose of most droids is to kick them, but
Well,
you know,
my argument always with droids is when they're introduced, they've got a purpose, but slowly people don't know what to do with them as the stories continue. And so get rid of them. It's just a mobile phone. Throw it away. The rest of the line, what's your kind of thoughts? You kind of mentioned it's not a range that you're a huge fan of, but we've got a Yoda, we've got a Dark Trooper, and a Vader as well.
yeah, I mean, you've got to have a Vader in there. Yoda looks quite tidy, actually. It's quite stylized, so I like it. And Dark Trooper, it's good to see that coming in more regularly to the line as a figure that you could sort of army build as people are used to. So yeah, it's like I say, it's made me reappraise the line a little bit. These are pretty cool.
Yeah. Jonathan making a comment there, as we mentioned, Skeleton Crew, that he didn't get into it at first, but he's rewatched it again and it's finally clicked. It's not a bad series at all. I think it's one of these series that's going to be a lot more rewatchable than perhaps some of the
Yes.
other series.
Yeah, I very much agree. I've already watched. I think I've watched every episode 3 times, apart from the finale. I need to watch that. I've only watched that once, but every other episode I've seen at least twice, if not 3 times. And yeah, I think it does benefit from repeat viewings, and it's definitely a bingeable show. So I can see it having good legs on Disney Plus.
Yeah, and talking about rewatchable content, starting next week on GMT, we're going to do Andor rewatch. So where we've been doing our Skeleton Bon Voyage and reviews of the episodes, we're going to review each episode of Andor. Theory being, if we start next week, we'll have recapped every episode before season 2 begins. So feel free to join us on that. Check out Andor season 1, episode 1 at some point during the week, and we'll be discussing it next week on GMT. So I'm looking forward to that because similar to Jonathan there, at the start of Andor, I didn't get into Andor. First 2-3 episodes, it wasn't clicking for me. Then all of a sudden it just clicked and I really enjoyed it. I went back and I watched it and I really got into it and loved it by the end of the series. So
Yeah, it was a slow burn, wasn't it? And releasing the first 3 episodes together was a kind of a cool move because as a block it worked. It only worked as a block of
yeah,
3. And you realised as you got into the season, you badly needed those first 3 episodes just to set the foundations for it. So yeah, it's a good idea to review them. I'm looking forward to that.
yeah. Next up in the news front, the next novel that's coming out from Del Rey is Reign of the Empire, The Mask of Fear, the first in a trilogy of books. The first one focusing on Mon Mothma, who obviously is a major character in Andor. Written by Alexander Freed. Releases on the 25th of February. If you hit the link in the show notes, it'll take you through to our article on fantatracks.com and you can actually read the excerpt there as well. I'm lucky enough to have got picked up from New York Comic Con an advanced reader's copy of this book, so I've had a chance to read about half of it, I would say. Not my favourite book because I'm much more of an Imperial guy. So it's really, it spends a lot of time tearing into the Empire and I'm like, ah. But I think this is a book that a lot of people are really looking forward to, Mark.
I certainly am. I've just started it. Got a NetGalley copy, so I'm just about to get started on it. And hopefully, fingers crossed on Canon Fodder, we'll be speaking to Alexander Freed. We're just hoping to line that up at the moment. But yeah, I am. I'm very much looking forward to this because of the era. and the characters involved and what it represents, really the early days of the Empire. It's going to be hopefully a fascinating read. And the first part of 3, as you say, is Freed writing the whole trilogy, or is it different authors? Do you know?
I
Or have they not
believe
announced
it's
that?
him writing the whole. I believe it's him writing the whole trilogy.
Yeah. So it's Bail Organa and Saw Gerrera, the other two. Yeah,
Yes,
it's
yeah,
right there in front of me. Yeah, yeah. So good characters.
yeah. It's a great time period. It's something that needs explored, and I've often advocated to get the opposite side of it, to get like young Palpatine and his growth into power as well in a novel. So I'm glad that they're doing this. It fits in really nicely with Andor as well. So it's nice to
Yeah.
see the TV and the publication kind of working almost in tandem.
Yeah, a bit of synergy. Yeah, and I agree. I think a West Wing style TV show showing Palpatine's rise to power would be fascinating.
Yeah, definitely. Uh, Paul McHugh, he's watching us over on YouTube, enjoying the fact that he's watching me whinging about droids whilst he's printing a probe droid to take with him to Finsa next month. Of course, next month is the latest convention at Finsa, which was the home of Hoth in The Empire Strikes Back. You can actually stay in the hotel that the cast and crew stayed in whilst they made the film and see the shooting locations, ski out there to Han Solo Rock and everything. We've been a couple of times, Mark.
Yeah, I had an amazing time both times, and went last year and had an incredible time. The weather was phenomenal. Excuse me. So yeah, but look forward to going again sometime. But as you say, Paul's going this
Yeah.
year, so we'll have a Fanta presence at the show this year.
Yeah, and if you're interested in going yourself, jump onto Facebook and search for Hoth Strikes Back. And you will find the Facebook group there, and you'll be able to join and get all the details of how you could attend yourself. I believe there's still some spaces available.
Yeah, yeah, I believe there is. Yeah, last time I checked, there was. Yeah.
And next on the news front, we've talked a little bit Skeleton Crew already. The showrunners did a fantastic interview, I thought, with Entertainment Weekly just after the finale dropped. And one of I think, the crucial things that came out of it was the discussion about what the future could be for these characters and for the story. And they'd already discussed the fact that they had a plan for season 2 with the kids being older. But they also mentioned that the viewing figures have been growing week to week, which is a very positive sign, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the figures, the news that's got out there so far seem quite negative, but obviously they see, you know, analytics that we don't see. So,
Yeah.
and they're working off different measures than the public are. But that being said, I don't think we've seen the whole scope of the figures. And if they're coming out and boldly saying, "Oh, we're watching the figures and they're going up week on week," then that's a positive thing. Hopefully, Disney are taking that as a positive. I
Yeah.
don't know what the budget is either. Of course, that's got to be a consideration as well. So it all sounds very positive from this interview.
It's difficult to get a handle on what the budget was because it's filmed in America. It doesn't have the same legal declarations you do when productions are made in the UK. I understand that the production budget for it was around the 115 million mark, which would place it at roughly, 1.5 times lower than some of the other Star Wars TV shows. So it is considerably cheaper to make.
Yeah.
Which is a good sign. The fact that the ratings that we've seen publicly so far came from Nielsen, who very reputable agency for analytics on streaming. And then they only looked at the first 2 episodes, so up to I think it was the 8th of December. The week of the 8th of December would have been when it launched. And they compared that to previous debuts of Star Wars shows, and it didn't do well. I think that's just the only way to describe it. But it's very rare for a TV show to see growth in its episode numbers as it progresses. And that's a sign of a successful show, because normally you get a lot of people will tune in, what's this show going to be about, and then tune out because it's not for them. So the fact that it's growing in numbers is a positive. And as you say, that Disney, it's on their own platform, they get all the analytics, so they're seeing how long people are watching for, are they repeat watching, and how many accounts in the household are watching it, all the stats. So they'll be looking at it closely. And if it's a low budget show to make and it's growing in numbers, that's quite a positive, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the last show I remember having that sort of growth week on week, there was a show about 5 or 6 years ago called Empire,
Yeah,
about the rap industry, and that seemed to grow, and it was making the covers of all the trades because of this incredible growth. And not that
yeah,
I'm comparing the numbers to this, but like you say, to see a steady progression, that's the classic word of mouth thing, isn't it? That people are
yeah.
hooking into the show, and generally online, the word has been pretty positive. So yeah,
It's the
hopefully
big
that's
benefit of streaming. Streamers, platforms want to see growth and
yeah,
viewership because the content's designed to sit there for years and years to come. It's not like it's
yeah.
been run on a schedule, um, like your traditional over-the-air TV. Um, so if it's a show that people are going back to watch, so if you're a fan of Skeleton Crew, you want to see more, keep watching it. Go back and watch old episodes. It's the best signal you can send to Disney Plus that you want more. And they'll be sitting down and they'll be looking at these numbers and how it's grown and changed over the course of the season and repeat views and so on. And they'll be making a decision in the next couple of months, probably. So if we're getting more, Celebration might be the platform to announce it.
Wouldn't that be amazing? That'd probably be the most popular piece of news over the weekend if they announced the season 2 of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Next, we're going to head to Jabba's court. We're going to discuss the reverse side of it, the potential of it. What happens if Skeleton 2 doesn't get renewed, Mark? So let's head on over to Jabba's court just now. So over on Jabba's court, over on Good Morning Tatooine, if you've been watching live, we've been discussing the fact that Skeleton Crew's figures have shown signs of being improving week on week. At the moment, officially, we've only got the Nielsen figures for the first 2 episodes, and it wasn't looking good in terms of a renewal. So this week in Jabba's court, our discussion is, if Skeleton Crew does not get a second season, where does Star Wars TV go? Because at the moment, we've got Andor that's coming to an end with season 2. We've got Ahsoka, which is rumoured to finish up with its second season as well. And I think there's still a question mark over The Mandalorian as to whether it gets a season 4 beyond the movie or whether the movie's going to wrap it up as well. Because there was kind of the talk of a giant climactic conclusion in the movies that would conclude all the TV shows. So Star Wars TV's in a difficult place. If the ratings aren't great and the content out there is all sort of coming to an end, where does it go next, Mark? It's a big question.
It's a massive question, and I think there's a few avenues you could look down as to what they should do or could do. One, cinematically, they need to put a focus on cinema. They need to make sure that once Mando and Grogu has come out, whatever comes after that has focus, is promoted properly. So the cinematic side of it becomes the promote, the big push for Star Wars. As a consequence, maybe television. Maybe it's time to sit back on the live action a little bit, as successful as it's been, and maybe give animation a bit more of a focus on television and make the cinema the focal point of live action Star Wars. So that's one option they've got. Excuse me. Another option is to keep going for their greatest hits, because Mando and Grogu was a smash. It was the first show on Disney Plus, did crazy numbers, but obviously there's been this slight sort of decline in the numbers. Obviously there's more competition. Marvel have taken off to a great degree. Pixar do their own stuff. There's all sorts of competition now out there on the streaming platforms. So maybe they go for the greatest hits. They might be a little bit reticent to try new stuff, because you could say Acolyte and Skeleton Crew, both brand new, different Star Wars things. Well, Acolyte didn't work out, as we know. Creatively, that's an argument for people's tastes, but certainly in terms of numbers, it didn't. And Skeleton Crew, as you just alluded to, the first 2 episodes, the numbers were, I think, 100 million down on what Acolyte was. So the numbers aren't good, but if they're progressing, that gives hope. So yeah, there's no easy answer. It's a difficult one. I don't know whether the fandom is ready for recasting, because my logical head says, let's get into the Han, Luke, and Leia stuff post Jedi. But you would need new actors to do that. I'd be for that. I'd be all for that. I want the characters and the storylines to progress. It's whether or not the general public are ready for that quite yet. If they're not ready for it now, I don't think they'll ever be ready for it. So yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah. Mike Roberts on X made an interesting comment. He would like to see Grogu grow and become a massive character in the universe. So really, yeah, that's a really good idea. You could time jump to Grogu when he's a fully fledged Jedi, in effect, because we've kind of seen Yoda and full flow in between hobbling around Count Dooku, and you could see that species. I was looking for what is Yoda's species there. It was in my head, but we don't know.
You ain't getting. I can't Google that one for you, boy.
Can't Google that one. Yeah. I could have just dropped a big spoiler there if I had it in my head. Yeah, an adult Grogu is a good shout in a way to continue what they've had success at. Jack's suggesting that maybe they rotate the push between Marvel and Star Wars to give each franchise a chance to breathe. Logically, you would do that, but the fact that they're two separate companies within the Disney chain of companies means that they've all got to deliver their own profitability.
Yeah.
So that won't happen, I don't think. Although it is a good shout, I think, because you probably are tapping into the same fan base with both. Jonathan, he's agreeing with you as well. They need to figure out something soon as well. Jack's looking for them to throw everything at a brand new storyline. And Mike as well saying that cinema is the better choice. And I think they've got to strike a balance. The Acolyte was an interesting one for me because it was set in the High Republic era, and the High Republic had been so successful in publishing that I think they thought they could capitalize on that a little bit by sort of having the Acolyte be its own thing, but be within that era.
Yeah.
The problem there is with the High Republic being a highly successful publishing program, is probably still only attracting between 5 and 10% of what you need for a successful TV audience in terms of who's picking the number of people picking up the books. And again, a successful TV show like The Mandalorian is picking up 5 to 10% of what you need for a successful movie for the number of people going to see it. So
yeah,
they're all different platforms and they've all got different levels of success.
Because I think Star Wars struggles. We spoke about this on Making Tracks, me and Mark earlier. Star Wars has kind of got a weird situation where the sandbox is so big that you can kind of go anywhere, anytime, any place and tell a Star Wars story. But there has to be elements that are familiar, are evocative, that pull you in. So part of me thinks right now Star Wars needs some easy wins. So an easy win. I mean, what's an easier win than a Boba Fett series? Well, basically, The Mandalorian is Boba Fett. Let's be honest. So that was an easy win, essentially.
The Boba Fett series didn't win so much.
Well, they were kind of that was like trying to make a Judge Dredd film after RoboCop came out, wasn't it? So they kind of had the rug pulled out from under them. But in terms of easy wins, I'm waggling the air quotes. Oh, I can. I'm not on a podcast. I can actually waggle air quotes. That like an X-Wing series feels like an easy win. It's like all the architecture's there. It's familiar stuff,
and it's a great story of the week concept.
Yeah, exactly that.
And that was literally you've almost debuted it a little bit in the various TV shows that you've had, and that nearly all the TV shows have had X-Wings arrive at some point or other, and it kind of shows you like how you can integrate them into storylines.
Completely that. And so there's especially if it's set within the Mandoverse era, if it's a Filoni Favreau sort of era thing, you've got Carson TV, you've got excuse me, other characters that have turned up in Skeleton Crew that you've just seen recently. So you've kind of got the start of maybe not a Rogue Squadron, but that kind of thing. So I think there's scope there if you want to go for things that are going to hit on the small screen as a sort of a weekly thematic adventure. I think they need to maybe not think too grand at the moment. That sounds horribly short-sighted, doesn't it? But I just think they need to get something that's just going to catch people's imagination, get them
Yes.
excited. Clips that look great on chat shows type stuff, you know.
Yep. Jack suggesting the Old Republic next. Farsight Games is suggesting that Skeleton Crew didn't get a second. I'd be amazed if the Skeleton Crew doesn't get a second season. It's been a breath of fresh air. Chris is agreeing with you, some rogues. And Mike would welcome anything with open arms as well. When Maul appeared in Solo, everything merged. I would love to see a Black Sun, the series. Let's see things from the criminal mastermind kind of side of things.
Yeah.
Jonathan's liking the TV line. Been a lot of good stuff. He liked Mandalorian, Ahsoka, and Rosetta, but he needs to be a cinematic return as well. And definitely a focus on animation for TV. Mike would like to see Solo 2, with the final scene of the movie being in the cantina with a silhouette of Luke. That's a great idea.
It is.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think a focus on animation is important. I think we're probably going to see that in Japan because that's probably a better market for Lucasfilm to promote animation. And I think we're probably going to get our first full-fledged manga series. I know we've had Visions, which has kind of been, I would class it as experimental.
Yeah.
And I think we're probably finally going to see them dip into that and have a fully fledged series with perhaps one of the Japanese studios getting the big announcement at Celebration that they're going to be fronting it, which would be exciting. I'd like to see something from Lucasfilm Animation themselves as well, that follows on from the Bad Batch, whatever that's going to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm confused as to where Star Wars TV goes. Similar to the movies, the need to ask this question is, what is Star Wars supposed to be and what's the storyline we're trying to tell? And I think they're struggling with that. They're sort of piecemeal a little bit all over the place, and I would kind of like a little bit of focus. And if they go into it, like they've built up with the Mandoverse, they've kind of built it up a little bit. But this time, go in with an idea of, we're going to create this, but we're going to build from it. And I've advocated many times before, because of my love of the Imperials, I'm going to say it again. You had a great character in Fell in the Rogue Squadron comic series who gave us a 5-issue arc on things from the Empire perspective. Why not give us a TV series from the Empire perspective? You can fit it in with existing storylines and characters, but spin it. And Andor's kind of dabbled in that a little bit. And maybe post Andor, that's the thing to do.
Yeah. First things first, before we forget, happy anniversary, Farsight Games. I see you there, John. I'd love to see, in terms of television, I think we spoke about it before, I'd love to see a Palpatine Rise to Power series, because it could take place over time, it would kick off on Naboo or before and work its way through. You've got historical things that can happen within that can be sort of waypoints to hit.
Yep.
As season enders, season openers, that sort of the old school sweep.
You've kind of got Tarkin on the political side, Tarkin on the military side, Palpatine on the political side.
Yeah.
So it's a nice,
exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a nice mix of things, and because it's in that, I mean, even leading up to Phantom Menace, he's got because it wouldn't just be a political thing, because it's Palpatine. You'd also have the build up, the sort of stuff you imagine Leslie Headland was kind of aiming for. If she ever got 5 seasons of Acolyte, it would move through the time periods and end up near a Phantom. Well, at some point, Palpatine would have come in as the apprentice, and it would have worked its way through that way. We'll never see that now, but you kind of feel like it would work its way in that sort of style. And I think to do something like that would be, I think it'd be fascinating. But that's, excuse me, again, it's quite a challenge. That's quite a deep cut, I guess. That's more for the older, longer term fans. But I still think there's play in that. So yeah.
And obviously, at the announcement, if they ever do make one, a young Palpatine series, you just announce it as somehow he returns.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It's
Um,
just he's young Sheldon with Force lightning.
yeah, Mike Roberts suggesting bring back the Ewoks. I don't know about the Ewoks, but a very focused TV series that sticks to one planet, and I know it's called Star Wars, but just a really focus in on one group of people on one planet and stories featuring those characters around that planet um, would intrigue me, I think.
I'll give you a great example as to why what you just said makes all the sense in the world. I'm going to talk about Star Trek for a minute. Star Trek, out there on a ship flying around the galaxy, meeting people, having adventures, and then they come up with the idea for Deep Space Nine. You could argue Straczynski came up with Babylon 5 at a similar time, of course he did. But locations, it's the adventures coming to you. So there's no reason why you couldn't have a Star Wars story where you're at an outpost, Maz's castle,
Yeah,
everything comes to you, or
yeah.
Batu, everything comes to you. So yeah,
Yeah,
I think that could work as well.
a bounty hunter guild focus, Maz's cattle focus, where you get a different denizen of the bar story
Yep.
each week. So much potential. Jonathan making the comment, they should have focused on Darth Plagueis Palpatine in the first place. I 100% agree. If there's one criticism of Acolyte was when they got to the end of the series and they showed this younger Yoda and Plagueis, and everybody loved it. That told them everything of what the Acolyte should have been in the first place, and that should have been a story with Yoda and a story with Plagueis, and possibly that's where they were going to go with a second season. But you've left it too late by that point because you've spent your 300 million budget and you haven't got the audience to show for it, to give them the
Yeah.
confidence to make a second series.
Showing
Uh,
Yoda and showing Plagueis felt a bit like a Hail Mary at the end, didn't it? It was just a let's hope this works, and it never quite captured the imagination enough. So
Bounty Hunter Wars would rock. Yeah, so there is,
yeah,
it's easy to feel negative, but there is so much there to mine from, and um, and you do it in a way where you're not picking like I'm going to do something for the original trilogy fans, I'm going to do something for the prequel fans or the sequel fans. You can pick something and make it Star Wars that can appeal to everybody.
yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And like you say, some of the ideas that have popped up on the screen, there's scope in them. And
Yeah,
like me and Mark were saying on making tracks, the conversation we're having right now and involving our viewers right now, people at Lucasfilm have sat down with blank notepads and paper and stuff and just chucked all these ideas down, and then probably instead of going let's do this one, would probably break it down as to why you shouldn't do this one or why you shouldn't do that one. And
yeah,
of course it's such a massive continuity now, but if you just find, and they will find it eventually, it's just whether or not the world's still receptive to it and ready for it. But when they find the thing that really clicks, then it will click like to a certain fans. Skeleton Crew has really clicked. It's not clicked in the numbers yet. Mando really clicked in terms of numbers and eyes on it, and the broad exposure of Grogu and all that sort of stuff. So they will get there, but I think maybe it might take a bit of time.
the interesting thing for me is probably the most critically successful content from the actual critics and from the fans, movie-wise, is Rogue One, and TV series is Andor, which
Yeah,
was all basically original characters in effect, or characters that really weren't explored in the films, or you're just touching on the films ever so slightly.
yeah.
And that probably should tell them a lot, that doing things that's all originals is perhaps the way to go, and have it light brush up against what we know. Mike
Well,
Roberts,
troll the scroll ups. That's what they should do. Like John Knoll picked that line out of the original New Hope scroll up. Troll the scroll ups. There's going to be stuff in there we've not even thought of.
yeah. Mike Roberts on X asked the most difficult question, I think. Why don't they seem to make the right choices?
Oh God, how long have you got?
I think it's like anything that's big corporation now. It's the levels of approval you have to go through to get anything done. So by the time it gets through all the levels, it's been watered down too much.
Yeah, I
And
don't
I
disagree
think
with that.
that's probably fair to say, not just for Disney, but for most major businesses, that good ideas get strangled to the point that they're no longer a good idea by the time they get released.
Yeah, and like you say, with Star Wars, above and beyond any other franchise, there's other factors. How many toys is this going to sell, or is it toyetic? I mean, goodness knows there wasn't a lot of toyetic stuff in Andor season one, but that there's all these questions that have to be asked above and beyond just is this going to be cool? Is this going to work? So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a difficult question.
And we'll give last comment to Jack on Facebook here as well before we move on. He makes a comment. He want to push past the Skywalker stuff for it all to carry on. I think it's maybe a huge gamble they don't want to make unless pushed. I think that's probably true.
I think, and this is going to sound grim, but I hope it's taken in the spirit that it's intended. I think we're going to struggle to get past the Skywalker era whilst Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, and George Lucas are still around. That sounds horribly grim, but I think whilst they're still presences in the world, there's still a connection.
There's still the potential you could do more. And I think it's probably fair to say, whether it's Leia, Han, or Luke, the characters, none of them got a satisfactory conclusion in the eyes of a large number of fans.
Yeah. They never got the Picard season 3 moment.
Kind of wants a little bit more.
Yeah.
Even if it's Harrison, I look back at the Young Indie stuff where they used to bookend it with his father as an old man, even a Solo 2, and you had Harrison Ford narrate an introduction or narrate an ending, would blow your mind. If you turned up to watch Solo 2 and you just saw an old Han Solo in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon with a grey Chewbacca, it's just narrating a story. Not going to happen now, but
it's not, no. But that's what they should do with the Lando story. It should be Billy D telling the Calrissian Chronicles.
Yes, yeah. So Star Wars, there's so much potential there. We need some big, bold decisions, I think, is what we need.
Bold is the word, definitely. Not new bold, just bold.
Yeah. And on that note, I think we'll draw a conclusion of this week's Jabba's Court, and we'll head back to Good Morning Tatooine. But just a final reminder that Jabba's Court is part of Good Morning Tatooine, your weekly recap of all the latest Star Wars news. It live streams every Sunday at 9 p.m. in the UK, 4 p.m. in New York, and also released on Fat Tracks TV every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Back to the news, Mark. It's been an interesting week in terms of news. And next up to discuss, we've got Star Wars publications with Marvel Comics, who are going to be celebrating Women's History Month with a series of special covers, including from comic artists Betsy Cola. I should read these before I try to pronounce them. Emma Lupacino, I'm going to say, with Jan Dursuma,
well done,
and Yasmin Putri. I'm glad that I got through Betsy Cola without saying Pepsi Cola or something like that, because that was the one I thought I was going to trip up on until I got to Emma, I'm afraid. I will do better. But some great covers for some interesting comics. We've got Fear the Jedi from the High Republic, Jedi Knights issue 1 as well, with a great cover there with Ahsoka. Young Princess Leia during her Jedi training from The Rise of Skywalker for its adaptation, issue number 2. And Rey on the cover of the Legacy of Vader issue 2 series. Still no word on really what's happening with the Rey movie, so it still seems to be in I'm not going to say development hell, because we don't really know what's going on, but they're still working on drafts of a script until they get something they're happy with. So I'm interested. I'm actually more interested. I don't know if the delay and the change in writers and the fact that they're sort of suggested she might be in a sort of spin-off film as well as a trilogy, it's kind of made me a little bit more interested.
Oh, totally. Totally. I mean, I don't know which one I want to come first. I'm hoping this the standalone, if they frame it like that, just to, I mean, smartly from a business point of view, see what the interest is, and I can't see the interest not being significant. And for movies, making her the focal point going forward, that makes all the sense to me. But these covers are gorgeous, especially that Ray cover for Legacy of Vader.
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic, fantastic art.
Also in the comic news front this week as well, we got Jedi Knights issue 1 and the fact that Atha Prime is going to be making his official debut, and a character that was unreleased concept for the kind of toy line from the 1980s, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw this, it kind of blew my mind because I saw the headline, I saw the image, and I was like, where do I know that from? I know that from somewhere. And then reading into the article, I think it was on Marvel.com, explaining the history, and it was just, of course, it was from the unreleased line of, I think it was the Epic Continues or something like that. And yeah, what a great idea to, and also because that would have been sort of post Jedi, but this is pre Phantom Menace, sort of moving him around in the timeline. Yeah, cracking idea, and I'm very much looking forward to Jedi Knights. I think there could be some fertile storytelling possibilities in that series.
Yeah, I actually first saw it on a Facebook comic group that I'm in, and I actually thought it was fan generated comic cover because there's a lot of fans get very creative and come up with their own covers,
Oh yeah.
and I was like, yeah, that would be a fantastic idea. But then I realised that they were actually doing it for real, and it seems like someone at Lucasfilms pitched the idea at Marvel, and Marvel thought, yeah, that's great. He looks great. We can do something with that.
Yeah, totally. And now the challenge is out there that, to all the guys at Hasbro, now you need to make this thing happen, either in the retro line or, whatever scale you want.
No, if they're not
Is.
making the figure to go out with the comic series, they're doing something terribly wrong. Although it's not been
Agreed.
announced, so it could
No,
be
but they've
later in
had
the
the
year.
design for 40 years, Bri. Come on, there's no
Yeah,
excuse.
there's probably a mold somewhere if they dig deep.
Yeah.
But the comic comes out March 5th. When the action figure will come, surely some point this year. Come on,
Yes.
Hasbro. Pressure will be on now. Next up on the news front, the American Society of Cinematographers have announced that they're going to be honouring Kathleen Kennedy at the ASC Board of Governors Award, taking place on February the 23rd, for outstanding achievements. I think it's undeniable to say that Kathleen Kennedy's legacy of work is extraordinary. You know, the projects that
Oh,
she's been a part of. And I know lots of people will say, oh, but I didn't like her contributions to Star Wars or where Star Wars is headed, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter whether you enjoy that. I think if you look at her body of work, you can't deny her this honour, I
no,
think.
no. I think if I remember, it was something crazy. Her films, the films that she's been a producer or had an involvement in, have had like 120 Oscar nominations over the course of 40 odd years. Just incredible numbers. And yeah, you can't deny. I mean, quite apart from Star Wars, and then if you fold in Star Wars, Force Awakens nearly did $1 billion in the States alone. It's the highest grossing movie in the States ever. Nothing's within 50, 60, 70 million of it. So just that alone, quite apart from all the stuff that's happened on Disney Plus and everywhere else. So yeah, just phenomenal. And as I say, I don't think it's wrong to say that she's now in her 70s. So she's got more of a career behind her than ahead. And now's the time that people of that sort of stratosphere in film get the nods, get the get the awards like this. And she got the Thalberg 5 or 6 years ago now, the honorary Oscar thing, and this is another sort of award of that ilk. And yeah, she deserves everything she gets in terms of these awards and nods for an incredible career.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of wonder a little bit whether the Mandalorian movie and potentially Dave Filoni's movie is kind of the point that she decides that's a nice landmark point for me to go, because probably arguably our most successful project in the Star Wars universe so far. I said universe, Mark, you never criticized it. Technically there's more than
Uh,
one galaxy now, so
well, there is now. Yeah, I've had to back off on that one now,
yeah.
sadly. So yeah.
You'll have to let me off with it now. But
I will.
has been The Mandalorian and the success that it's had on TV and
Yeah.
transition into movies, and our pick obviously for Dave Filoni to take on creative, I think excites people going forward as well. I wonder if that's a landmark point where she decides this is a nice cap for my career at that point.
I would imagine if that film comes out in, was it May next year, May 22nd, I think,
Yeah.
off the top of my head, and that has a crazy big opening weekend, and 500 or 600 million in the States and a billion plus around the world, and you've delivered, what will that be, her sixth movie? So you've delivered 5 out of 6 billion-dollar movies. I mean, really, and you imagine that the movie could potentially be the springboard for more television. You'd like to think. Yeah, I think maybe that's the point, at some point around about there, or where she'll say, yeah, I'm good, I'm going to move on, bring the next person in. Now that's a whole nother Jabba's court, who's going to come in to replace Kathleen Kennedy, because she was handpicked by George. Well, unless she's going to handpick somebody to take over the role from her, or maybe that's not her decision to make. Maybe that's a,
well, you're going to have
imagine
a replacement for Bob Iger as well, which
that's true.
changes up things as well. And there's a lot of pressure on the Disney board to bring in younger people as well.
Yeah.
There's this big move at the moment in terms of executives staying well beyond what is the traditional retirement age.
Yeah.
And a real push to bring younger blood in. To be fair, I think the next president of Lucasfilm is going to be somebody that we don't know. There's going to be someone from the entertainment executive world that all of us are going to go like, who?
Yeah, totally agree. It'll be
that,
it'll be somebody
and
from
to be fair,
Parks
that's
or something
probably
like that.
what it should be. To be perfectly honest, it should be a nondescript person that we never really know of and don't really care, because our focus as fans should be on creative more than it should be on the person that's sitting in meetings discussing latest policy on fire regulations and blah blah blah.
Exactly. And in this instance, it's making sure. Excuse me. It's making sure that people like Favreau and Filoni, they have everything they need to go
Yes.
out and do the creative stuff, and then they can take care of all the other sort of producer, presidential type stuff that they would need to do. You want the creatives to have the open road to go and make the stuff that
And I
we want to
think
consume.
that, interestingly, is exactly really what Shelley John, the president of American Cinematography, basically said, is that in her project, she elevates and confirms her trust in the directors and cinematographer. And I think that's what you want from your president of the organization, is to give your creative all the tools they need and the support that they need. And I think that's probably the biggest praise you can give her.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Next up in the news front, some sad news that London Comic Con, the spring edition, has been cancelled. They've made the difficult decision because so many guests can't confirm their attendance, and they're kind of hitting the point where we really need to know whether you're making it or not, and we need to sign contracts and so on, because we need to promote and we need to sell. But obviously, we've had this terrible series of fires going on in the Los Angeles area that's been incredibly devastating. Shocking pictures have been seen on the news, which has resulted in several guests just not being able to confirm what they're going to be doing. And so they've made a difficult decision to cancel this spring's con and try and rotate as many of those guests into future London Comic Con shows.
It's understandable for the reasons they've given. It's turned the whole of LA obviously upside down and inside out. So, an event like this, excuse me, would kind of be, for a lot of people who were attending, would be not at the top of their priority list. As a consequence, showmasters don't want to promise things that they can't or are unable to deliver on for whatever reason. And there's few reasons that you can think of that are more prescient and pertinent than this. So yeah, I think given those circumstances, they made the right decision. Put the focus on July for LFCC, and hopefully a lot of the guests that were coming to spring will join the guests that were already being planned for July, and let's make the summer show a real blockbuster.
Absolutely. And one last news item for this week. Skeleton Crew again talking with the showrunners, and they were asked about the Great Works, which was something that featured on the planet and throughout the show, and the fact that they were being educated, the kids, to participate in the Great Works. The parents worked in the Great Works. Was revealed that Hal was running the planet, and that was because that was an instruction of the Great Works that this droid be in charge. Makes you wonder who's in charge of the droid and filling the droid's artificial intelligence. And I also I still run back the fact that the last message the supervisor got was to follow the Jedi Knights and Order 66 effectively.
Yeah.
Which was interesting. Because does that mean that the Emperor had a way to communicate with them? Or what?
Makes you wonder.
It does.
It makes you wonder.
So they were asked a direct question whether the Great Works was supposed to be a direct connection between the High Republic and At Attin. And I really liked their answer to this, because they effectively said, yeah, well, kind of, but we weren't doing it in a way that would impact on what the High Republic writers were doing. It was just kind of a reference because it made sense, because there's been this Great Works in the past in Star Wars. Why wouldn't that concept still be around centuries later? So if you want to link it, you can, but it doesn't really have to be linked. It's just something that's existed in this galaxy.
Yeah, that's a great logic as well, because it doesn't box in the writers of the High Republic. It doesn't box in Ford and Watts either, because as you've just explained, it's a loose enough concept that anybody around the galaxy could kind of take that ethos and run with it. And we've got the 9 worlds, so that's a skeleton crew mythology thing. We see At Attin, we know of some of the other planets. We don't know what they did. At Attin was the gold reserve, but the other worlds may well have done different things. And I think that's mentioned in this as well. I think Chris Ford sort of says we don't know what the other world specifically did, but it doesn't have to be the same thing. But like you say, going back to the High Republic, Great Works, Starlight Beacon and the exhibition, and there's other things in and around that. It makes sense that you could kind of pull them all together. And I just think it's strange that we had Acolyte, which was the High Republic TV show, and weirdly Skeleton Crew feels like it's almost equally as hooked into that era as Acolyte was. So yeah, I like the explanation here. I think there's definitely scope to explore this further in season 2.
Chris David suggested that the money on that and could have funded the Final Order. That's kind of where I thought it was going to go, to be honest, until I heard Stephen Fry's voice, and I thought, well, he's not going to appear in person because Stephen Fry normally does voiceovers now than physical work. So I thought it's going to be a droid, like my initial thought was. But I kind of wanted Snoke or someone similar to be behind it, and this is where the money would end up going to fund the First Order or the Final Order.
Yeah, you look at that, and you look at that reserve, that what was it, 1,139 reserves like that on At Attin, and you're thinking, well, that could pay for Starkiller Base, couldn't it?
See, my theory though is that it's only worth a lot of money because Old Republic credits are rare. It's a bit like finding a crate of rocket firing Boba Fett's. If you bring a crate of the rocket firing Boba Fett's to market, suddenly the value of your rocket firing Boba Fett crashes. So
I like your logic.
So yeah, is it worth a lot of money? Could have been a financial battery for the Emperor for sure. If the last message was from the Emperor and it was the Order 66, then the Emperor left them alone all that time. True. Never sent anyone to see them.
True. Like you say, it's about having access. Who has access to At Attin? If that message came around the time of Order 66, presumably the supervisor excuse me, saw the same message that Obi-Wan gives out, or receives, rather, not gives out, receives, the whole thing about the Jedi have turned on us and so on and so forth. So like I say, that message was sent out by the Emperor. So there's other questions there, and again, it opens up a whole potential avenue for further storytelling in books or comics of what did At Attin know when the veil came down, essentially, to hide this gold reserve, these Fort Knox of Star Wars, you know. But as you say, did the Empire know? They you kind of assume that they didn't, because you know these kids and the even the grown-ups, the moms and dads, haven't left At Attin, so you got to assume that it was hidden, you know, from everyone, and nobody knew, and that's why it became a legend. And we know how quickly legends grow in Star Wars. It doesn't take many I was going to say generations. It doesn't take many years for the Jedi to become a myth, let alone a hidden planet with gold reserves on it.
And you mentioned the sort of 9 planets. That's another kick-off point you could have in a prequel series that
Totally.
focuses about the heydays of those planets. Is the other planets, are they the other 9? Or was At in itself a separate experiment? Because that was never really fully explained either, I don't think. Mike Roberts also asked the question, as Brutus said, that's the question. Well, the pirates survived the acid bath.
Yeah.
So maybe they can survive their ship being blown up as well. Don't know.
Who knows? I'm
I
waiting for
liked-
Gorian Shard to come back like Groot. Just a
Yeah.
little, you know,
He would have been a
sprig.
great lead character for that series as well.
He
So that was a
would.
bit of a
He
shame. I
would.
think we've lost that character, but you know, that's life. But the exciting thing from the Skeleton Crew as well is there's lots of ways you can spin off from it, and there's lots of ways that you can tell stories from it. And I think that's what you want from any series, is opportunity.
Yeah. Totally, and the characters within it. I mean, you just look at what we had. There's a Jod series, there's a Supervisor series, there's a 9 World series. You know, there's loads of stuff that you could spin off. I mean, it's a multimedia franchise, so it doesn't necessarily have to be television, although preferably it would be. But yeah, there's loads of stories that you could tell in there if you wanted to.
And I think that's probably a good point to bring this week's Good Morning Tatooine to an end, Mark. So we'll just run through some quick promos, because you can check out all the news that we've reported on Good Morning Tatooine at fantatracks.com, where you get all your Star Wars news in a single file. Everything Star Wars, Lucasfilm, films, TV, collecting, fashion, gaming, literature, music and arts, with interviews, event coverage, podcasts and reviews. And you can also find us on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, X, and everybody in most countries in the world can find us on TikTok as well. And Mark, Father Tracks Radio as well. You can go to your podcatcher of choice and search for Father Tracks Radio. What have we got on the channel at the moment?
We just had on Friday the latest episode of Planet Leia, where they were looking at the children of Star Wars. On Tuesday, it's the latest episode of Making Tracks 214, if I remember my numbers. And on Friday, it is the return, after a little break, of Fantha Down Under with Adam.
Fantastic. And of course, check out Father Tracks TV every Sunday for Good Morning Tatooine. Jabba's Court every Wednesday at 7 p.m. And Father Arcade will start as soon as I can figure out why I cannot get my PlayStation to talk nicely with my Mac, because I cannot hear the audio. So I'm almost there, people. I'm almost there. It is
almost there.
I will find a solution. I am trying cables after cables and not succeeding, but we'll get there this week.
Will.
This week. It's a kind of running joke at the moment, Mark.
For about 18 months, yeah.
Yeah, just about. Thank you for joining me this week, Mark. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. I'll have Paul back with me next week. And as I said, we'll be starting a recap of Andor Season 1, if anyone wants to join us in the rewatch of that. And of course, stick with fantatracks.com throughout the week for daily news all around the galaxy, Mark.
Yes, always news on Fantha. So anytime you check it out, there's probably something new on there. So plenty coming this week, and some good articles as well. So make sure you go and check that out.
So it's a good night from me.
And it's a good night from him.
Yeah.
Keep up to date with the latest Star Wars news each and every day on fantatracks.com. You can also find us on Twitter Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Tumblr, and Pinterest at Fantha Tracks. And be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and follow Fantha Tracks TV to be alerted to new content and to be a part of our live shows.